Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Loshe.
Still at it, John.
We're still at it, and we're here in the Christina Lou Show. Now, the very specific Christina Lou Show. There's different kinds of Christina Lou Shows, but this is the very specific Christina Lou Show. And we'll get back to anything that needs to be touched on in reference to the town. But I have a question for Christina that I'd like to hit off or set this segment in motion in. And, you know, everybody's going through the COVID, everybody's going through the pandemic and doing the best they can. And through that, some people have new contacts and new friends, and some people have older ones that they're not in touch with anymore, which is very funny. So my question to Christina is, where has been your support before, during, and very possibly after COVID? And the point is there people in your life via technology that weren't there before? All of a sudden you have a new friend who has reached out to you and you've reached out to them. And has, you know, and we're not using names, has somebody from your past kind of just dropped you? Because now it's a technology hello versus let's go for a glass of wine someplace. If you get my question. It's kind of
that's a great question.
Of course it is.
It's a little different for me because me in general, I'm always the person that is constantly reaching out and making time. You know, I don't have children at this time, you know, so it's easier for my husband and I to be the people to run around and schlep around and pop around and visit everyone. So that's always kind of my role all the time. So especially. Am I
being rude by going back and saying you don't have children at this time? Okay.
Yeah. I'm not pregnant, guys, so that wasn't some like hidden thing. But what is really something that is hard during this time, obviously, is to stay connected with people because it's, you know, it would be easy if I could just drive and pop over someone's house, you know, in the past. Obviously, it's gotten a little easier now, thank God. But especially in the beginning, you know, you really couldn't see anyone at all. I'm very fortunate that I live, you know, I've said this before, in a 2-family house with my parents were upstairs, you know, my brother is up there with them and I'm here, you know, I'm down with my husband. So it was nice to all have each other during this time because it certainly would have been very difficult if I couldn't see my mom and my dad, you know, during all of this. So the fact they were upstairs and we would kind of be each other's support and try to find little joys along the way. It was really something important, and I'm glad. And you know what it is too? It's times like this that you realize who are your closest friends, you know, who's going to reach out to you. And, you know, it takes an extra effort, certainly, to be the person to maintain that and to stay connected in kind of new and creative ways. So it really depends, I think, on what is important to you. And that's something that I always valued was I never want to lose touch and with certain people. So
well, you were very lucky there because I know how close you are. Yeah. And the fact that you guys have a 2-family house versus your mother being at the other end of town.
Yeah, forget it.
And to be separated for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, because it was, you know, and to be together, it was, you know, it was scary. You know, you didn't know about groceries. You know, and my parents are older, you know, so it was nice to be able to, you know, run out and get things and figure out things. You know, it was just, I mean, we're a tight family to begin with, but it certainly created an even tighter unit to kind of figure out, you know, there was even more, you know, group family dinners because, you know, it was trickier to get certain things. You know, so it was one of the perks of the situation. So that's really it, guys.
And you did a lot of, you still do a lot of celebrating holidays and special events virtually. And you still did, which is very important. I think that's a very important thing. You didn't turn around and skimp, you know, just because it was Corona and it wasn't the same as having all your friends over. You still turned around, and which I think is a very significant thing, and decorated the table, made a theme versus just saying, oh, what the hell, it's Corona. Yeah, have a hero sandwich and let's call it a day.
I like that. Have a hero sandwich and call it. No, but you know, And that way, and like I said, you have to identify things that are important to you. So frankly, I love, and my stress release and is to think about, planning something or putting details. And when Corona hit, that was a heavy time of a lot of celebrations, whether it's birthdays or holidays, and so it was kind of a new way to figure out how to, for Mother's Day, normally I would take my mom out, it'd be a whole thing. But I was like, let me transform. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a beautiful backyard, that my husband created with beautiful flowers. And so it creates a nice little ambiance to begin with. And, so I was like, all right, let me do a tea for her, and figure out ways to do this. And luckily over the years, I've acquired a lot of things. So it's not too hard to whip up on a quick notice different things. And like I said, obviously I love, my house is a place where I love having people over and hosting and gathering. So it's different, to not have all of your friends there. But it's little things that, you do and you feel good about it. And that's what I said. That's something that was important to me that I didn't want to lose during this, because it would really break my spirit if I did. So.
The important thing that you're also saying, which people have to pay attention to and listen to very sincerely, is you enjoy doing it. And people have to take the time now and find something they enjoy doing. This is not over. And we obviously, over the last X number of months, we've had many people on this show. And there's not one of them that's turning around and saying, next weekend it'll be fine. Even our situation here with the radio show and how we're doing it is going to be for a while, it seems. And again, this is all guesswork. It could be another month. It could be another 6 months. That being the case, it behooves everybody to find something they enjoy doing in this little bit of isolation. Otto, I know, was talking about a football thing. I saw something online the other day about a football thing.
Well, yeah, I believe what was said by Kristina is you have to have the will to want to fight this. You have to have the will to want to do whatever it is you're going to do. And if you're having a problem with that part of it, I know people, unfortunately, who have the will part of it is not good. And I consider that a mental health problem that people would probably need help with in order to gain that will back. To me, I'm very fortunate in that I have family that's close by, and family was a very big thing. But there are people who are not that fortunate, where their families are distant and they're in other places, or frankly, maybe they do not have the relationship with family that maybe people should have for whatever reason. So I think that a lot of that type of thing gets really magnified while this is going on. If you have a good family, the need for good family is even more important. And if you had a problem with family before, that's going to be even more magnified. That, all of a sudden you're estranged and you can't communicate with your family. Maybe people in both sides of the problem have to try to do something about it during this period of time. But I go back to a very basic premise. You have to have the will to want to do it. And that's a fact in anything. I can't think of anything where that doesn't apply. It's a difficult time, and it requires a lot of adjusting to change. And you pointed out in one of our earlier segments about it, which has nothing to do with this, but the fact that people really don't want to change from special districts. They talk about wanting to do it, but the will to want to change it isn't there, so it's not happening. And I think it's very true. I have a long list of things which we can get into in another section here, of the things people can do. And technology is wrapped around a lot of it, but there are a lot of things for people who do not have the technological capabilities. You have to do something. You can't sit there all day. And it's not good to sit there all day and watch television, in my opinion. like we talked about getting a different cross section of opinions from one channel to the other channel. But when all is said and done, most of it comes out fairly negatively and drags you down, because 90% of what you hear is the negative part of it, and the lies, frankly, that are distributed. Uh, the fear that people try to get um, to sell their agenda, if you will, with fear. And none of that's any good for your mental health. It's all just drag you down. You have to block that out. Um,
No, Otto, what you're saying is exactly how I feel with these things, and, when you really touched upon it with this fact of having the will to do these things, it's something you could just throw around, but that's not an easy given, for a lot of people. I know plenty of people who have, suffer with anxiety and depression, and being in this situation even more so hyper, magnifies that situation, and feeling so it's even more difficult to really get the will to, or the motivation, because things are heavy. We say all the time, like, I'm not going to sit here and ever say that it's not, it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's a heavy time, and it really can impact you, and especially recently, just yesterday, it's like, you see the amount of suicides going up, and drug, masking things with drugs is even higher than the COVID cases. It's like, so just that alone just blows your mind and shows the impact of this. And we frankly don't know how long, unfortunately, it's gonna be, like, so the bottom line is, I want to encourage people, like, it is so important. Now is the time to find someone, and this goes back to John's original question, that is your safe place, whether it's a therapist, whether, it's a family member. It depends on your level of comfortability, or a friend, or a neighbor, or just, someone just to talk to, and get out how you're feeling, frankly, and it's hard. And I think it's just so important. And it's really, like I said, everyone's got a different level of something that brings them joy, or, maybe they want to find something new, a new hobby, or a new, whatever it might be. I say all the time, during the thing, my husband was just coming up with these different things. I'm like, we've been together for almost 20 years. How did I not know that you could, like, draw really well? Like, it was all these little things, and he also apparently can take up hair cutting. He got a very high tech, buzzer situation, and he cut his own hair, and then he cut my brother's hair as well. So it was very impressive.
well, I think the mental health part of it is serious, and I know a number of people just like you, who are good people, but they have a mental health issue, which all I can say is people who have a problem should try to reach out to the safe place, as you put it. Um, Reach out somewhere, somehow. Or the reverse of that is for people to try to reach out to people they know who have a problem, which is not always easy either, because the people who have the problem maybe don't want to be reached out to. So there is no easy answer. I don't think we're sitting here talking about how everybody's in la la land, and everything is just hunky dory. I think we all three, and Dan, know that that's not the case, but it's something you have to fight and work at, and you have to have the start of the will to want to try to get going in a positive direction. Not easy to do.
This is Project Independence in You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Loshe.
Zipping along.
And we're in the last section, but we're talking with Kristina Lew on the Christina Lou Show. And the question I want to commence this segment with is, you talk about different things, and I know talked before about you have to want to do it. And I'm agreeing with that 100%. But how do you feel as a person, and you're very beneficial. You are a benefit to many people who know you, Kristina. How do you help keep those people around you sane? I know you're in a 2-family house, so you had your parents upstairs, and you have friends. You have plenty of friends, and you had your brother. Um, some ideas on how, because we're going to be here for a while longer. Yes, as Laura Curran said, we're in phase 4, but there is no phase 5, but not everything's opened. And we're not going to dances, and we're not going to concerts, and we're not going to baseball games. Where is sanity in your little backyard, so to speak? And I don't mean yours is a little backyard,
No, I mean, what I was thinking too, and Otto was talking in the previous segment, a little thing too goes a long way, and you don't even realize, and that's something I've realized even more during this time is, a little gesture or thought to someone, whether you send them a card or a text, or a little gift, whatever it might be, whatever extreme you want to go to, it really, people so appreciate it, and you don't even realize sometimes, I take it for granted, I'll do little things, and then the impact it really can have on someone is so much greater than just putting yourself out there and doing a little thing for someone that they're being thought about. And I think that that's something that you really need to take with you and think about. We're not talking about, listen, we're not saying you need to throw some grandiose, at home, quarantine party by any means, but like just a little tiny thing that you can do for someone. And that's what I've actually seen is so lovely during this time is, people were dropping off on doorsteps, little gifts in the neighborhood, I would see. And it's just, it's little things that I think you need to do. And like I said, you have to also realize what's important to you, so if it is important to you to maintain that relationship with someone, putting out the effort, and receiving it is really, it's what gets you through it, frankly, because like I said, it's going to be hard sometimes.
I just need to say one thing, and I didn't send that question out to you with any predetermined answer, but Kristina says, do little things. I have, and Kristina knows this, I have many little things in my office and in my home, in my den. It's kind of, I have 2 dens, one is kind of mine, that Kristina has sent me over the years. A little angel, a little smile face that I'm thinking of you today. Simple little things. And I'm not, again, when I'm saying simple, heartfelt, wonderful, wonderful things. Simple was the wrong word. Very impacting event. All of a sudden, very recently, I got a journal. It was delivered by Amazon. I was like, oh my God, I journal, and she knew it, and she sent it to me when I wasn't having such a good period of time. And a little angel, I have one in my bag right now at work. There's certain things I carry with me. There's certain things I have at home. There's certain things, and they're all coming from you. And it's interesting because you're saying that, and it's so true that I don't do the same thing to other people in my mind that you're doing for me sometimes that I so truly appreciate, as opposed to learning from you. And I'm going to have to pay attention to that. Because
it's like,
it doesn't take a lot.
And you know what it is too? When I love someone, I love very deeply. And so that's just who I am. I get it from my mother. I was born with like this need to, when someone else you care about is hurting, you're hurting, so doing these little things, what I started doing, I couldn't go to stores in the beginning. We had all these holidays, Easter, whatever, fell in between. So I was really just I said, what can I do, to be creative and I can't go buy cards in the store because I'm trying not to go to a store. So I started to make cards. I also happened to have a lot of these things lying around the house. So it worked out. It didn't make it too hard to take on this task, but, it was something like that. And, the responses I was getting from my friends, that it was just so nice. I mean, I'm old school too. I think it's so lovely to get something in the mail that's not a bill. When you see a card, it brightens your day. I know how I feel when I get that, so to do that for someone else, and it's just such a little gesture, and even if you just wrote a little note to someone, it's, and it's also a personal kind of touch, more so necessarily than even shooting someone a text. It's just a nice thing. And like, it's just a little thing, I'm the queen of, listen, you look around my house, there's probably 10,000 plaques that say it's all about like the little things. But I truly believe that.
You touched on something that people who, we keep talking technology, but the facts are not everybody has that ability or the equipment to do it, but they still have pencil and paper, and mail still gets delivered, and people who are home and isolated might think about sending letters to people, and people who are not technologically up to speed, maybe people might send them a letter like you're just talking about. You can communicate by mail, which is how most people did up until not that long ago.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. It's
you know,
so, and you could just literally, you put the letter in your, and that's what I was doing. I wasn't even going to, an outside mailbox. I was just putting it in my mailbox.
yeah.
The postman, sent it on, and it was literally, so that all could be done in just your house, and it's, whether you want to insert a little picture, we were talking about going through things that you have. I mean, that's what we were doing. And I'm like the keeper of all, of photos of my friends over the years. Look, I've had the same group of friends for a very long time now. So there's such history, among. So that was a lot of what we were doing, was going back and sharing, old pictures or old memories. So it's something as simple as just that. I'm sure we all have pictures lying around the house that you might want to actually get rid of. So you're making it someone else's problem then.
Well, John mentioned the log, and even if you do not have a computer, you can handwrite
Hmm.
a log and some history, like we talked about the reminiscent group. You can actually write a little bit of a history about yourself, your feelings, whatever's going on, and just for yourself, if not for no other reason. And then ultimately, maybe somebody will read it someday and really enjoy it.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
one of the little things I remember back, my mother lived with us for about 11 years. And in the end, she was in a wheelchair. And my mother was a very, very active person. But, stuff happens and she ends up in a wheelchair. But what she used to like to do is, we had a window that you could open up, and where we live, I'm right across the street from the school, and there's people around. So she would like to sit there and just look out the window and people watch and bird watch, and as opposed to just being isolated in a dark room somewhere. Um, yeah, just as a thought. And when the weather's not 98 degrees, it's not a bad idea to just step outside for a little while either, and sit outside.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you know, um, so I mean, there are things you have to try to do to get away from just looking at four walls, which people might be in that position. They're every day, same house, can't go out, same room, talking to nobody. I can only imagine how difficult that would be. Um, it's not easy, but there are things that you can try to do to make it a little better.
No, you're so right, Otto. And that's, and you mentioned it earlier too. And I think it's so important, obviously it's, as you said, it's, two sides of the coin. You have to, people have to have that will, because we all know people who forever, their whole lives probably were that woe is me kind of person. So it's very hard to get that. But on the flip side, I think it's also their responsibility to be the person to reach out to people, especially those who are having a harder time, or who might be a little more isolated, during this time. So it's I think it's something, and just as a neighbor, as a human being, it's important to do for other people. So.
But that's an interesting thing. You mentioned the word neighbor, and the world is so different now as far as neighbors go. I will admit that on my own block, I really only know the people on both sides. We've had movement,
Mhm.
change. Um, People come in. It's not like it used to be, like there'd be a welcome wagon or whatever, and people would get together and chit chat. So the neighbor part of it is a little more difficult.
You're right.
Just because that's the way it is.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and the reality of life also is that there's a lot of different cultures that move together now, and most people don't understand each other's culture yet, because it's like first generations again with different groups, and it makes it a little more removed as far as neighbors go. And that's not easy to break down, because people are busy running around, and most of the time you may see a neighbor once in a year. You don't even know who they are. Um, so to count on the neighbor part of it only is not the way to fly anymore.
No, you're right. It's but what I do, it's even as something, because even during this time, everyone was so scared of, coming into contact with people. I would go on these walks with my brother, and he had a dog in November who, was a great little addition to this, because he's a little corgi and he's kind of like a ray of sunshine. And I'm so not an animal person, but this dog is so lovable. And the fact is, it's something as simple as we were saying, so we would go on these walks, we would try and get exciting and change our route, and see. But there would be different people in the community sitting outside, and a lot of them were seniors, and they would be so excited and say, "Oh, I look forward to seeing you guys walk by," and because, he walks by a little dog, and, we say hello. And I found myself even more so than normal wanting to say hello to people. As even if it's just a brief thing, like I said, something so simple like that, and to hear these little, oh, we love seeing, him walk by. It makes our day, so
Well,
it's a little thing.
what's interesting about that is that I walk also, as you know, and there are some people who are warm to that, and there are others where they don't even want to make eye contact.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, what's the worst that happens? They don't wave back. Listen, there's been plenty of times I've you just do a quick wave, and people don't want to receive it. You tried to give it. So
yeah, I mean, you
They see Otto coming and they run in the house. Oh, run, it's Otto.
But like I said, you can only give it a shot, right? You can't win them all.
all you
But
can
like I
do.
said, it's a simple gesture. It's not
At
good.
least, bottom line, at least we try to win them all. That's all we can do. Okay? You've been listening to Senior Talk Radio here, specifically the Christina Lou Show. We'll see everybody next week.